Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Tori, and thank you all for joining us this morning. As Tori mentioned, if you have questions come up as we're going through these slides, you can either type them in the chat box, or we're also going to have a Q&A session at the end once we get through all these slides. So that'll be more of a discussion with all of you. I recognize a lot of faces here, so I think a lot of people on the call are familiar with our IRF program, which we have gotten additional funding for the Industrial Revitalization Fund through ARPA for the next 2 years. An additional $50 million was given for the IRF program, which has allowed us to create this mixed use on Main Street, which we're really excited about, and we'll be running through our real estate office in conjunction with the Virginia Main Street team, which is also part of our Economic Vitality and Community Revitalization Division. So the focus of mixed use on Main Street is to take vacant and derelict downtown spaces and help fund the renovation of those to increase commercial development and more housing units downtown. $2.5 million has been given for next year, which will allow us to give awards up to $500,000 per project. As I mentioned, it will be run very similar to the IRF program, and we're going to go through the guidelines here now, and then we'll have those available to you all so you can see where the differences are between the traditional IRF program and the MUMS program. But as with IRF in the past, at least 30% of the property will need to be slated for commercial use. And then in addition to that, housing units also must be part of the proposed project. So we can go on to the next slide. So a quick snapshot, we've been doing the IRF program for over 10 years now, and based on the success of those projects, we are using the ARPA money to expand the IRF offerings. With the traditional IRF program, we've given grants or loans of up to $600,000 per project. And typically we were funding about 3 to 4 projects per year. Before the infusion of the ARPA funds, we had usually about $1.5 million per year for the IRF program. And we did require a 1-to-1 match for every award that was given. The ARPA money has allowed us to change those guidelines a bit, and we're now able to give projects up to $5 million in awards, and we don't require match for the IRF projects unless they're awarded above $1 million. So we just saw that roll out last year. We had an application deadline last summer, and we'll be announcing soon what projects are being awarded from that, and then we'll have another funding round in 2023. We've also been able to give IRF planning grants through the additional ARPA money. And then with this $2.5 million for now, it's a one-time allocation. So we're looking at how we can best distribute that in 2023. Next slide. So our timeline for next year is we're starting with today in the How to Apply webinar. And then on January 1st, we're going to have a pre-application form available on the IRF website. And we ask that anyone interested in applying for the MUMS program first fill out this 2-page form. Once you fill that out, which we'll go over that later today, you'll be contacted by a member of our staff and we'll discuss your project further, and then you'll be able to fill out the full application, which will be in CAMS and accepted on a rolling basis throughout 2023 until the entire $2.5 million is depleted. We do, and I think there was one note on that slide, once your contract is signed with DHCD, we expect the project to be finished within 18 months, which is the same timeline we use for the IRF program. So eligible properties are really any downtown building that's vacant and deteriorated, with a plan of having at least 30% of the project be commercial and housing units incorporated. So even though we've called it the Industrial Revitalization Fund in the past, we see a lot of projects that were formerly schools, hotels, shopping centers, all sorts of things. If the project is going to be solely residential or turned into a greenfield site, however, it would not be eligible. Allowable activities. We go into detail in the MUMS program guidelines of exactly what can be expensed and what cannot be, but for the most part, any physical renovations to the property, the hard costs will be eligible. Soft costs for the most part are not eligible. Things like acquisition, rehabilitation, and repair are all allowed. Some demolition, removal, and other physical activities can be expensed, but for the most part, acquisition and demolition will only be approved if it's part of a larger project. We don't want those to be the sole funding, the sole expenses that are being requested. Grant administration is also not an eligible activity. So in order to be eligible, you need to be one of the tiers for our Main Street program, which is Advancing Virginia Main Street, Mobilizing Main Street, or Exploring Main Street. This map shows that we have these types of communities all over Virginia. There's currently 28 Advancing Virginia Main Street communities and a lot more of the other two tiers. So the property will need to be in one of these designated areas. So as with the IRF program, all applicants will need to be the local government or the regional or local economic or industrial development authority on behalf of the property owner. However, it doesn't have to be a publicly owned property. They can apply on the behalf of a private developer. The award is given as a grant if the property is publicly owned, or if a privately owned property is going to be going for a nonprofit tax-exempt entity, then we can give it as a straight grant. If the property is owned by a private for-profit entity and it's going to be used by that entity in the long run, then we actually will give the money to the locality, who will in turn loan it to that property owner. And here on the next slide, it shows you what our typical loan structure is. This is the same as for the IRF program. So we would expect the same for the MUMS program, though this is a conversation we would have at the time of contract negotiations. But the standard loan structure is an interest rate of 2.5% with amortization of up to 20 years. And we do require a deed restriction as well. Each locality for the MUMS program is only going to be allowed to submit one application, so requesting up to the $500,000 cap. So because we want to just see your best project from each locality, we will also require a resolution from the local governing body saying that this is your priority project. For the MUMS program, we are not requiring match. However, it's always advantageous to show other leverage that you have if it's in hand or planned. So as part of your application, you would want to include any other funding or grants that you have lined up. so that we get a full picture of what your financial status is, and we have confidence that the project will be completed. These are the funding priorities we look at for the MUMS program, and you'll see our scoring is based on these 6 priorities. 1 is development of mixed-use properties and housing units along Main Street corridors. 2, a high degree of blight and deterioration to be addressed. 3, your project readiness. 4, project with a clear end use. 5, an end use that has clear and significant community and economic impact. And 6, high economic distress in the project locality. This shows how we break down our scoring. And as we receive applications on the rolling basis, your project will have to score at least an 80% in order to be considered for funding. We can go on to the next slide. So as we mentioned, we're going to have a pre-application form available on the IRF website beginning January 1st. This is the form. So we're really just asking for the project basics and ensuring that it fits with the focus of the MUMS program. So here we ask for the name of the applicant, the property address, the property owner and what the financing plan is, a description of the current condition of the property. And you'll see there's notes in here to kind of help guide you. So a reminder that the property must be vacant and derelict. The proposed total project budget, the MUMS funding request, the intended use of the MUMS funding, so exactly what activities the MUMS award would go towards for this project. Describe your ARPA eligibility. Because our funding is coming through ARPA, we need to see that your project addresses a COVID-19 pandemic negative harm caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and we want a description of how your project is kind of going to address that and help with that. And then describe the property end use and describe the catalytic impact of the end use, both how the physical project renovation will help the surrounding area as well as from an economic impact standpoint. So once you fill all that out, we will review and a member of our team will be in touch to discuss further and then allow you to fill out the full application form in CAMS. All right, so now we're at the question and answer section.
Yeah, so again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat feature of Google Meet and we can get those answered. While we're waiting for some of these questions to come in, Courtney, I don't know if you want to discuss a little bit about kind of the Main Street, the mobilizing Main Street. I know some people have some questions about that or how this connects with the Main Street priorities.
Absolutely. So we are trying to encourage more upper story housing development for housing to create a dynamic place to live, work, and play. Also to create customers for coffee shops, restaurants, personal care service businesses, just trying to enhance the vitality of the downtown. And as far as the 3 tiers, we have not yet announced the mobilizing tier. But if you are on the call and have applied for mobilizing, regardless of the outcome of that application, you will be part of the Exploring Main Street pool. So you would be eligible for MUMS funding. And I'm happy to answer any other questions as they come up.
Right, and there will be some bonus points, so some other considerations as part of the full application. So there are some bonus points for projects that are in the Advancing Main Street communities or Advancing Virginia Main Street communities. Also, if there is a mixed income portion of the residential part of the project, there's some additional funding points for those that'll be mixed use, mixed income projects, as well as some of those others that we have typically for the IRF program as well. So we do have a few questions that have come in. So the first one is, if it's a loan, will it be subordinated to other lenders? So typically, yes, with our IRF applications or IRF projects, the IRF, if it is a loan, we can typically work that to be subordinated to your first lender if you get through a bank or other lending institution. So that's kind of typical with these funds. So that's the answer to that one. If the next question is the funding for 1 year only or for 2 years? So it is, as Annie mentioned, it is on a rolling basis. So as long as there are funds available, they are available through the end of 2023. So it's really just a 1 year program. It's a pilot program. So hopefully, if it's successful, that we will be able to appropriate some additional funding for the program to keep it going for future years. But at this point, it's just a 1 year funding for the project. So another question, is there a desired residential percentage? No, there's not a desired. I guess it all depends on the building, and typically we look at the first floor being commercial for the most part, and then the upper stories being residential. So if it's a 2-story building, it'd be about a 50-50 mix. A 3-story, the only parameters that we do have is that at least 30% of the usable square footage has to be commercial in nature. So it can't be more than 70% residential. Is new construction allowed with this program? No. So if it's a greenfield site, new construction is not allowed with the program. It's only renovations, rehabilitations to an existing blighted or underused building. And are only residential or rental properties eligible? What about condos? I think that's something, Courtney, we could talk about. I don't think it's required that it would have to be a rental unit. That could be condos. It's just we're wanting to activate the full building, and so I think residential, whether it's a rental unit or condo kind of nature, I think that's okay. Courtney, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. That's correct.
So another question is, can the municipality give a private for-profit developer a grant, or does it have to be a loan? It would have to be, we do require it to be a loan of some sort. So there does have to be some type of repayment on it. So it does, but we can talk about if there is a need of kind of changing around some of the terms of the loan. We've done that in the past. So on kind of a case-by-case basis, if there needs to be a different loan structure than the 2.5% for 20 years, we would talk about that during the contract negotiation period. So another question is, would a building that was recently condemned for serious code violations qualified? The building was recently occupied but needs extensive renovations to restore it to code compliance and make it attractive. That's when we probably would need to talk with you on a case-by-case basis, kind of get a little more information about the building to see if it could possibly qualify. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we can talk a little bit more in detail about that specific property. Another question is, does the building have to be within the defined Main Street district, or can it be elsewhere within that community? It does need to be within the Main Street district, correct, Courtney?
That's correct.
Yeah. So whatever that defined Main Street district is, it does have to be within that district, because that's what the focus is to activate these buildings within the Main Street district. Good question, though. Another question, does it have to be an empty building? 3-story building with upper stories empty, good for apartments, but has an active antique store on the first floor. Probably not, because it is being used, even though it's not being full utilized. Yeah, that would probably be a little bit more problematic than if it was not being used, or is just using it for storage or things like that. So. So yes, questions about the recording. We will have the recording put onto the website, the IRF website, as well as I believe there's going to be a blog post that's going to be going out this week. So by the end of the week, we should have everything, all the recording up on the website so that you can access it later. There's a building that had to be stabilized, but actual renovation hasn't started yet. Since work technically commenced, is it still eligible for you to apply? Yeah, I think that's fine. If there was some work that had to be done to keep it from, the roof from falling in, or for the, keep it to stabilize it, I think that's fine as long as it's still still vacant and needs, meets the other requirements of the program. Fine. Salem, if you have a question, do you mind typing it into the chat real quick? Are there any significant limitations on layering of funds? Is horizontal mixed use permitted along with multi-story? Jeff, I don't know exactly. Yeah, so typically IRF is used as kind of part of a capital stack. So there could be bank financing, other grant programs such as CDBG, ARC funding, or even tobacco commission funds, or even some loans from organizations like LISC, things of that sort. So yeah, there are not really any limitations. Also, there could be some tax credits in there, historic tax credits, things of that sort, that are part of the capital stack as well. So there's not really any significant limitations on that. I'm not sure exactly what the horizontal mixed use is. I mean, typically we would like to see the main floors of these, the first floors, be a commercial use, because that's typically what the Main Street buildings are used for, and then the upper stories be activated for the residential. I don't know if Courtney has any question or anything to add to that.
I don't have anything to add to that. I would say, Jeff, that very few buildings in our downtown districts are single-story residential. They typically are multi-story mixed use or commercial if they're single-story.
Okay, thank you, Salem. Question is, can we add a residential story to a building without a roof or floor? So no, I think that's fine if you're renovating the first floor for commercial use and are adding a portion onto the building. That's fine. That's eligible as part of the IRF program. So I think that's fine if you're adding to add on to a building to create some additional residential. I think that would be fine. So questions, we have a 12,000 square foot building that is one story that is empty. Can this be used? I think so. There are some one-story buildings that may have, like, the front part of the building is commercial, and then the back half or a portion of the building is residential. We've done some projects, some IRF projects that are similar to that. So as long as you meet the other requirements, I don't think it has to be. Courtney, if you have any other thoughts on that, I think that it's a possibility to have a one story. It's great to have a one-story building that's has that mixed use component to it.
I have nothing to add.
Okay. So there's a question about the next IRF deadline in 2023. So for IRF, I think the next deadline will probably be late spring, early summer, May, June timeframe. And then another question, are funds available to be used as a planning grant for a redevelopment project? We do not have any funds right now available. We just had our last planning grant round that just ended a month or so ago. So I'm not aware of any. Chris McNamara with Virginia Housing might have some resources that might be used for some of that pre-development cost, planning type activities, and that he'll talk about here in just a few minutes.
And Virginia Main Street does have financial feasibility grant funding available on a rolling basis. Yes.
So yeah. I'm sorry about that. Yes, Courtney. So there are maybe some funds available through Virginia Main Street for those buildings in the Main Street district. So actually, this is a one-time opportunity for now. So we do not have any guarantees that there will be any funding in subsequent years for this program. So, you know, we hope if it's successful that we can get some additional funding for it. But at this time, that is not guaranteed. So it's a one-time at this point. All right, I think we got through all of our questions. Again, keep putting them in. We'll answer them after Chris is done as well. But for now, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris McNamara with, we do have one more slide that has some resources. The program materials will be saved online. Everything will be updated later this week with all the materials. That will include, there's not only this recording, we do have a one-pager front and back about the program as well, so you can share that with others. We'll also have the pre-application all online under the resources under the IRF page at dhcd.virginia.gov/IRF. And of course, if you have any questions, you can email us at either realestate@dhcd.virginia.gov or our contact information there. Actually, that should say virginia.gov, not .com. I apologize for that. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris McNamara, and he can talk about some of the resources available that can be used in conjunction with this program from Virginia Housing.
All right, thanks, Tori. I'm excited to be here with you all today. This is a really exciting program, and we're really interested to see where this can go. Virginia Housing has some mixed-use, mixed-income financing and a few other programs that might be beneficial to you all. Tori, we can go on to the next one. Slide. The biggest one, obviously, is our mixed-use, mixed-income financing. This is for multifamily mixed use. We do want to see at least 50% of the property used for residential use. This is below market fixed rate. It is a loan, not a grant. We have several different financing options that start with very low income all the way up through market rate, just depending on what kind of property mix you're able to do. These are open to private developers, nonprofits, and then quasi-governmental like EDAs, IDAs. They do have an affordability requirement, which is a little bit different than the MUMS program, but that can be as low as 20% of the units being at a certain AMI. And we do require these properties to be in a revitalization zone, which can be a qualifying census tract or a designated revitalization zone from your local government. Okay. This is just kind of an example of some of the different mixes we can do with our housing options. Like I said, as low as 20% of the units can be affordable at 80% AMI or below, and then the rest of them for market rent. So if you're doing 5 units, only 1 would have to be affordable. And then the couple other options, just depending on what mix you want to do, just making it work for your community. Okay. And then we've got a couple grants and things for maybe some of these projects that aren't quite ready to jump in and do the MUMS funding yet, but you know you have some interest in doing them. We've got some planning grants that can be used for small area plans, market studies, and economic impact analysis, policy analysis, some preliminary A&E, all sorts of stuff like that. So anything planning related, get with us and we can talk about some of our grants. Our grants are open to local governments and nonprofits, which include all of you Main Street programs. And we don't require a match for them, so they are accepted on a rolling basis. So definitely good for you all to use. Okay. Our development grants kind of talked about this a little bit with some stabilization and deconstruction. If you have a property in one of your downtowns that needs some work on it, needs to have the roof held up a little bit while you're getting some of these studies done, we do have a grant for that to help it stay up. We want to see these buildings be used eventually for something different than just sit there and get worse. But if a building is at a point where it can't be saved anymore, we do have a deconstruction grant as well that can be used to demolish that and get it ready for redevelopment. Okay. We also offer a pre-development loan. This is a chance for our private partners, developers to get in here and get access to some of this money that is used for things like your soft cost. So where the MUMS program is more for the hard cost, this is used for more of the upfront site planning, appraisals, market studies, all of that. This is an interest-free loan. It is paid off with your construction or permanent financing and has a 36-month term on it. If the project for some reason can't move forward, we have the option of having that be forgivable for you. So you wouldn't have to pay it back, so it's useful. You can see some projects we've done. We've done a lot of work on main streets. We've partnered a lot with the IRF program in the past, so definitely familiar with how this one works and using our programs together. Go ahead. And yeah, I mean, I just want to give a really quick overview, but if you all have questions about any of our programs or want to talk more about using them, please reach out to me. We're happy to talk more and go from there.
Great, thank you, Chris. So please feel free to ask any questions of Chris, or if you have any additional questions for us regarding the MUMS program. Chris, there's one that's asking if you can send a link. So if you want to email Chris, actually, if you email Chris there at his information there, I'm sure he'll be happy to send you all that information on those programs at Virginia Housing. So anyone can do that. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, as far as additional points available for the MUMS projects, another bonus point would be given to any property that's going to be owned or managed by a Main Street organization, so that will be providing some additional revenues for that Main Street organization. So we want to encourage that to provide potentially another revenue stream for the organization, so you don't have to do as much fundraising or getting other funding for the program. So so that is another bonus opportunity for a project. And Chris, there's another question. Are the development loans available through Virginia Housing issued as grants or loans? And if loans, what are the repayment terms of those development loans or the pre-development?
Sure thing. Yep, those are actual loans, and the repayment terms, they're paid off with the construction financing or permanent financing, depending on the project. It's a 36-month term at 0% interest.
Okay, great. Yes, actually, the MUMS program is available to all tiers, so anywhere from exploring all the way to those advancing Virginia Main Street communities. Another question: if a Main Street program acquired a property, does the end use have to be mixed use? Yes, it does have to be a mixed use property for the MUMS program. So that is required to have some residential component to it as well. All right, are there any other questions? I think we've kind of covered all that has come in through the chat, unless I missed something. But again, we're really excited about this program and the opportunities this might provide some of your Main Street organizations in redeveloping some of those properties that you have in your downtowns. I know almost every downtown still has some vacancies, even as vibrant as your community may be. There are a couple more questions coming in. Correct, not outside of your Main Street district. So yeah, so it does have to be within your Main Street footprint for the MUMS program. So I mean, for IRF, that there are some other the neighborhoods around that could benefit from that. We could look at it as a potential IRF project, actually. So. And then all the programs Chris just talked about, MUMS, no. So the programs he talked about are through Virginia Housing. These are not DHCD programs. Those are through Virginia Housing, and so you need to get in touch with him. His information is still on the screen there for you. So, question: if the public sector owns a mixed-use property but a private sector manages it, is it still a grant? So yeah, it will go by who the owner is. So yes, that would still be a grant if the public, the locality or the EDA, IDA owns the property. So, all right. With that, I think that's all we have for you today. Again, thank you for your time. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Like I said, the information will be up on the IRF website by the end of this week, as well as the recording of the webinar. I think there's going to be a Virginia Main Street blog post that's going out tomorrow with the link to the recording as well. So again, thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.